you're tracking your rebooking rate, virtual, high 5, high 10. Now, today, I want to give you proven strategies to fill your schedule and hit 80% rebooking rates in your med spa. Because wouldn't it be nice not to have to spend so much money in your marketing? Wouldn't it be nice not to pay employees to sit around and not see patients? Well, I promise you, if you follow these proven strategies, it really is possible to hit an 80% rebooking rate in your med spa. If you joined me last week, I talked about how you should be tracking rebooking rates, and first and foremost, how important tracking that metric, because if you are not inspecting those numbers, you can't expect for them ever to improve, and certainly expect to hit an 80% rebooking rate. So quick recap, what you want to do is at the end of the week, review over all the patients that came in and take that number and look at how many left within their next appointment to determine what your rebooking rate is. Because the reality is there's a much less chance of them coming back in if they left without their next appointment. Of course, there's strategies to try to re-engage them, but really your best chance is rebooking them before they come in. And don't allow your team to give you the excuse of, well, I don't need to see them for 3 months, right? For their Botox, or 6 months, or I only see them once a year. It doesn't matter. Think about your dentist. Your dentist doesn't let you leave until you have your next appointment booked, and either should you in your med spa. Because again, 80% rebooking rates is really what we are shooting for. So let's dive in on the best strategies to ensure that your med spa is hitting that 80% target. So first and foremost, just tracking it, boom, automatically, you're going to get a bump by holding your team accountable to knowing their numbers, right? Because they don't want to suck. They don't want to be called out or compared to their peers that is getting a much lower rebooking rate than they are, right? So that's a great one in itself. But now once you're tracking those, what are you going to do to move the needle to continue to improve on it, right? If today you're at a 30 or 40% rebooking rate, how can you get to 50? Then how can you get to 60? And then of course, how can you eventually get to 80%? Which is the target that you are going after. The very first one that I would like to share with you is to establish who is responsible ultimately for the rebooking. And you have to really pinpoint this person, because if you allow it to be a free-for-all and no one is ultimately held responsible for it, then you're going to get people passing the buck, or like, I thought they were going to do it, or they already did it. So regardless if your patient journey or rebooking strategy involves multiple people, there has to be one person that is ultimately responsible for that data point, that number, okay? So establish who is it responsible. And I gotta tell you guys, at the end of the day, I think that the provider, right? If that's the esthetician, if that's the injector, if that's the laser technician, whoever is the one doing treatment on the patient should ultimately be responsible for the rebooking rate. And the reason why I strongly believe that is because they have the authority, the trust, the relationship, the credibility with the patient. And I've seen many times where providers get in a hurry and forget this very important piece at the end because they think their patient is just going to be like to take it upon themselves to schedule before they leave, or they think front desk is going to be taking care of that. But even a really good front desk still doesn't have as good as opportunity as the provider does, because the front desk didn't just spend an hour touching my face or my body or advising me or counseling me on a treatment plan. And so you could have the best treatment, you could have the best consultation, you could have the best rapport with the patient and have really good intentions, both you and the patient. But at the end of the day, if you're leaving it in the hands of the front desk, even a super great front desk, you're going to decrease in what your actual rebooking is. So first and foremost, the rebooking rates should be tracked by provider. And then secondly, you have to have it orchestrated out in your patient journey. So what does that sound like? What does that look like? If you are handing it off to someone, what are the key things that person, that front desk absolutely has to have? But I will tell you, best practice, the highest rebooking rates across the board is when the provider, whether it's on their tablet or their computer, rebooks them before they ever leave that treatment room. Especially with those high ticket services where you just melted my face and I'm a bloody, hot, crusty mess. I don't want to stand at checkout when there's 4 or 5 people in the waiting room and stand up there. I like the privacy within the treatment room. And I can tell you, it's so much harder to say, no, let me think about it, let me check my schedule, or whatever their fake excuse is of why they're not going to schedule their appointment before they leave. It's so much harder to say that to the provider than the front desk, right? Because you just gave me all this time, all this love, all this attention. I want to say yes. I'm in the habit of saying yes, right? Because you've gotten those micro commitments along the way. We built trust, we built rapport. So if you want the highest rebooking rates in the industry, you're either going to have a computer or a tablet or an iPad in the treatment room. And when they are adding in their notes or their treatment plan, or if maybe you have Touch MD where you're creating your proposal and your treatment plan all right there, you're also scheduling out their appointments. Everything is in there to make it super easy. Now, on top of having the technology within the treatment room and doing it right there with the provider, take it one step further. You want to see the best rebooking rates in the industry, but you don't want to pay your providers, right, that have a very high hourly salary or hourly rate. Well, I have clients that every single PA or MP, they have their own assistant, right? That's their runner that changes their room, that adds their notes, that rebooks their appointment. So they're having a conversation with their patient and they're getting those commitments along the way. And their assistant is adding that all into the system for them. And you think about how much you pay to have a medical assistant to your MP or your PA, right? How much you would have to pay that person compared to the hourly rate of an MP or a PA. And boy, does that make it worth it all at the end of the day. I also have clients that say that is one of the benefits of working at their med spa, because very few practices are willing to invest that money to provide the support that their providers need to get amazing results for their patients, to move through patients faster, to make sure all the little things get done so that your providers can really focus on delivering amazing results for their patients. Now, if you are stepping into this and you're not quite ready to have an assistant for your providers, you're not quite ready to have technology in the treatment room, although I think you should definitely consider both of those strongly, then you need to look at having paperwork that people can easily, your providers can easily circle, add notes on, write things on to hand that off to the front desk, so that there's not this big conversation between the two, whether it's because of time or because of confidentiality in the waiting room. But at the end of the day, the provider is setting your front desk up for success. Because if your front desk doesn't at least have the information they need to be able to sell the retail, sell the membership, the package of 3, or at least rebook them, then what chance do they have? So we've talked about having an assistant, we've talked about the technology, and then get old school if none of those work for you, and have paper, and because the handoff needs to happen at the end of the day. Now, just because your checkout process might include your front desk being the one that ultimately rebooks them, your provider is still absolutely the one that should be responsible for their own rebooking rate at the end of the day. Because if your provider sets your front desk up for success, then it's going to be easy for them to get the attribution for it. But you also need to be holding your front desk accountable and say, hey, I noticed that Sue's rebooking rate is much lower than Sally's rebooking rate. Let's talk about the differences. Are you getting the information that you need to be able to help those patients get them rebooked? What kind of objections are you getting? Why are they not moving forward and breaking that down, getting some feedback? Because maybe it's as simple as the provider is not asking for that commitment. The provider isn't making that recommendation. The provider isn't handing the information to the front desk that they need to be able to close the deal for them. You have to investigate those things so that you can continue to fine tune at the end of the day. And the last tip is, and this is again, absolutely important, is that your rebooking rates really should be tied to compensation plans. It should be, because it's that important, right? I think the two biggest indicators for rebooking rates is obviously revenue generated by provider, but also that rebooking rate. You can't discount it, because remember, it's costing you, the med spa, anywhere between $250 to $750 to acquire a new patient. And less than 50% of new patients that come in off of your marketing are ever coming back, you guys. And remember, that first appointment, not always is there much profit for you, because by the time you pay your marketing costs, your overhead, your consumable, your labor, not a lot of net profit is left. So if you're turning and burning through those new patients and not retaining them, not rebooking them, it's a really hard way to grow your practice. And so you really need to make sure that you're holding your team accountable for retaining those patients. So it's not just about selling them once, right? Or that revenue on that first treatment is important, but are you retaining them? Are you rebooking them? And I promise you, if the minimum expectation, let's say, is 60% or 70%, and then bonuses kick in when you hit that 80% rebooking rate, people are going to start paying attention to it. And because when you pay attention. When it's their money that is affected at the end of the day, those are the strategies that are going to get your team to pay attention to these kind of things. Otherwise, it's very easy to be like, oh yeah, I did it. And they're going to think about it, or they will let us know. Now you'll notice I didn't say 100% rebooking rate. And even the 80% target, right, isn't the minimum standard. But guys, man, 60, if not 70, really should be that minimum rebooking rate, because you are going to have a slower go of filling your schedule, right? Of meeting your revenue goals if you don't have a high rebooking rate. It's one of the easiest things to improve. It really is. It's way easier to increase your rebooking rate than it is to increase your average revenue per hour. I know this to be true because I've worked with hundreds of med spas across the country and I've helped them with both. And I've seen such faster improvements in rebooking rates that then improve revenue rates so much faster than trying to train and build confidence in team members when it comes to revenue per hour or sales, right? Because there's a lot of things to unpack often when it comes to improving sales, a lot of mindset things that you have to unpack. So the path of least resistance, the path to fast, sustainable growth really is increasing your rebooking rate. And guys, if you can hit 80% rebooking rate, I promise you so many challenges that you have in your practice are magically going to be solved just by this one metric. That's how important it is. So if you loved this training, make sure you share with your team or another med spa that could benefit. And to get access to more free trainings that will help your med spa grow, visit my Linktree and my social bio, and be sure to join me live every Wednesday, 2:30 Central Time, same place, finding me on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me.